I've had these Altec bookshelf speakers kicking around for a bit, but one of the tweeters doesn't work, so I tested it outside of the speaker and got sound, so it must be a crossover component that needs to be replaced. The speaker wire connectors are also the worst, so I plan to replace them, but I'm not exactly sure how that'll work. Also, I meant to do a lovely intro on this video where I sat down and explained things, but I recorded it in slow-mo, so we got this instead. The 887 Capri, also known as the Mini Monitor 2, came out in 1973 and was one of Altec Lansing's attempts to get more into the consumer home hi-fi market beyond their larger horn-equipped speakers. They have a simple crossover consisting of a 6 microfarad capacitor that looks to be some sort of wax or film capacitor, as well as a 10 ohm resistor, and a variable resistor to control the tweeter level. Because the capacitor isn't electrolytic, I expect that the sound, especially the tweeter level, won't be improved much, as these sort of capacitors don't degrade as much over time as their electrolyte-equipped brethren. I was hoping that I could remove the old speaker connectors and install screw-mount binding posts in the holes, but wasn't sure if I had some that would fit. So I started drilling out the rivet, but it was hard to maneuver around the wires and components, so I removed them, which made this a good time to clean the potentiometer, which will help remove any static or crackling noises it would make when being turned. And thankfully the crossover plate is made of sturdy aluminum, which meant that after drilling the rivet, I could use a punch to push it out. However, this left 3 holes in the mounting plate at the back, so I covered the center hole with tape, then used some black RTV glue to fill the hole and prevent any air leaks. After test fitting a resistor, I found some binding posts that would fit in the 2 remaining holes. I'm super excited to have good connections on these, since the original push connections had holes that were only large enough for like a 20 gauge wire. The new post can take up to a 12 gauge, which is just really nice. I'm soldering at 800 degrees Fahrenheit, 427 degrees Celsius, and using Kester 6040 leaded solder, so you need to be quick with your soldering iron and have good air filtration. These speakers came to me somewhat as a surprise with a couple of receivers that I purchased, and I didn't realize they were Altecs until I got home. And I kinda like the way they look, but I just don't need any speakers right now, so I'll have them listed for sale by the time this video comes out. Link in the description if you're interested. I also put the links for the parts that I used in the description. I needed a 6 microfarad capacitor, but none were available, so I wired 2 3 microfarad caps in parallel for a combined 6 microfarads. Usually it's hard to line up the components exactly how you want them, but these crossovers are so simple that it didn't take very long for me to get to a place where I could test the tweeter.
Your kids are gonna feel that.
And it worked.
And you clearly have.
After a bit of finishing work, they sounded great in my living room. Alright, so I did the crossover on one of these speakers, and then I tested them next to each other, and then I did the crossover on the other speaker, and while I was testing them, I honestly didn't really notice much of a difference. Usually it's kind of obvious when you do a crossover update that which one has the newer capacitors. It's like, oh, that one either has more high end or it just sounds less shouty or something like that. These ones were really not obvious. If there was any difference in the sound, it was actually the tweeter on the one I did the crossover on was a little quieter, a little more reserved. I tried to get the potentiometers, the treble adjustment on the back as even as I could, so it's really hard to say whether that played into it or it really was just the new capacitors made a slight difference.